Good afternoon and welcome to the first annual CEO Summit. To begin our program, here is CEO Alpha, Charlie Garcia.
Can everyone have their seats, please? Hello.
Camera two go.
As I was telling everyone in the last session, we ran out of time because we invited a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs to join us, and of course we invited about triple of what we really thought would come because we didn't think they would come, and they all came. So it was really interesting and shows their commitment to all of you and to the leadership guidance that they can give us today. So I'm honored today to introduce our moderator, which I'll do in a second, but I also want to start with Gerald Hassel is the chairman and CEO of BNY Mellon. He is also the chair of the convention host committee, and nothing here today would be possible without his guidance and his team's guidance. They really made this very special and holding. They are certainly holding a very high bar for the Walmart Corporation next year. Also here today, Oscar Munoz is President and Chief Operating Officer of the CSX Corporation, and someone who's been given the nod to take over as CEO soon, $34 billion company. Ted Mathis, one of our top partners, CEO of New York Life Insurance Company. Thank you for being here today. Ted hosted our senior leadership team at his office today, which was great. And Bob Moritz is the CEO, chairman of PwC. When I stood up last year at the gala and said that I wanted to have personal relationships with chief executive officers, the first buzz I got while I was still talking was Maria Moats that said, "You're going to meet Bob in the next month." So thank you, Bob, for that, and Maria. And Jay Hooley is the CEO of the State Street Corporation, and he has lent us one of their top talents, EVP, SVP, Yvonne Garcia, who has been a wonderful chair to us, and so many talented State Street senior executives that are all over our Alpha organization. Thank you so much for your support. It gives me a distinct honor to introduce Sol Trujillo. Sol came from Wyoming, very humble background, the first to go to college, and he rose through the ranks quickly and became the youngest VP in the history of AT&T. And his career kept going and going and going. He ended up being the chief executive officer of US West. And if that wasn't enough, he went to France to be the CEO of Orange, which is now France Telecom. And then he went from there, if that wasn't enough, all the way to Australia to be the CEO of one of their largest companies, Telstra. So he's led 3 $40 billion plus market cap companies in 3 continents. And because of the theme tonight of Latino global leadership, I thought that Sol would be the perfect individual to moderate this panel tonight. Sol, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, Charlie, thank you very much. And I do want to thank all the panelists before I even start. And I want to thank them because, you know, dedicating the time, the thinking, the sharing of ideas, the willingness to interact is a big statement by a CEO who leads a company. Now, I'm going to say this having run companies where you always have to be careful what you say. Plain and simple. You have to be worried about disclosures. You have to be worried about being quoted or misquoted. You have to worry about a lot of things. And I use the word worry. It's not that you get up in the morning and you worry, geez, I'm going to have to be here in New York this afternoon. But they have to be mindful of corporate duties and responsibilities. So when they agree to come, when Charlie and everybody here at Alpha have invited them, and they've graciously accepted, I think we all owe them a big round of applause for just coming here. And I'm going to get to the question shortly, but I think it's terrific that they're here. So let's thank them for being here. Now, one of the big challenges for CEOs, as we think about, all of us can sit back and look at any company and look at their CEO and say, why are they doing this or why are they doing that? Gee, I would think about it differently, whatever. One of the biggest challenges for every CEO in today's world, in what I would call the digital world, is that the change is continuously happening. And your business models continuously change. Your competitor sets continuously change. Consumer behavior is changing. Geographic considerations put new pressures on companies, sometimes up, sometimes down. So the fundamental question that I'd like to start with some of our panelists today is this question about what are the most significant challenges facing your company, your industry today, and how do you look at it? How do you assess it in the context of your company? So what I'd like to do is bounce around amongst the players. And so let me start with Gerald, since he's been so active and so supportive of this event. I'll pick on him first in terms of addressing that. Gerald Hassel, Chairman and CEO of BNY Mellon. So Gerald, do you want to talk about how you think about that? Because obviously your industry has clearly been both challenged and being affected by lots of market and technology change.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I always love beginning to be the guinea pig on the panel, so I'm delighted to address the question. And you're absolutely right. Our company, our industry is going through an enormous amount of change. When you think about coming out of the financial crisis, the financial institutions, around the country, particularly the large ones, were considered to be the causes of the financial crisis. Our business models were in question. The size of our exposures, the complexity of our organizations came under severe, criticism and challenge. Then we faced, a very slowing economy and actually a recession for an extended period of time. Dodd-Frank came into play, and this pace of change in the technology, not only at the consumer level, but at the institutional level, just absolutely extraordinary. And then last but not least, the regulatory environment, the supervisory environment overseeing our organization. So as I say to all of our team members all around the world, if you like an intellectual challenge, this is the core organization in the industry to be in, because we are literally dealing with 3 or 4 dimensional chess. We're trying to change our business model, change our technology on the fly while being supervised every step of the way. The level of our capital, level of our liquidity, the types of activities that we can operate in, the countries we can operate in, are all being questioned every single day of the week. And yet we are an incredibly important part of the financial infrastructure of the world and how it operates. So doing all of these things simultaneously while also improving the financial performance of the company, because we do have shareholders who are extraordinarily active and very interested in our financial performance. So other than that, we have a pretty dull day. And so one of the real challenges for us is we can't do the things we did in the past the same way. And the speed of change is accelerating by the minute. So we have to pick up the pace within our organization and act with a sense of urgency in how we think about things how we develop, how we introduce new applications, new technologies, reach our client base in a very different way than we did in the past. And we have to do it much smarter, better, and faster than we did before. And so the pace of that change is extraordinary, and the only way to change a 231-year-old organization quickly is to get a broader, diverse, more talented set of individuals within our company who are willing to think differently, who are willing to challenge the status quo, to really challenge the nature of the organization, or otherwise we won't change and evolve and develop and be relevant to our clients in the marketplace. And so when you think about the amount of change that we're going through and the evolution we're going through, it's been a fun ride, but it does require all of us to think very, very differently about the organization, our products, our services, and not the least of which our clients. Our clients are going through the same level of change that we're going through. And when you think about everything that you experience as a consumer, as an individual, all of the institutions that we work with want the same ability to access information in a much more robust way. So it's an exciting time in our industry, it's an exciting time in our company, and an exciting time to bring in new talent of very diverse backgrounds all around the world to help us get through that process.
Great. Well, thank you. So staying on this notion of challenges facing companies, some you control, some you can't control, some you have to get ahead of, et cetera, I'm going to move over to Oscar, because we just heard about financial services. Now there's this whole sector called transportation. And then there's this word called railroads. And you know, we all have a picture of what a railroad was. And I think we need Oscar to help us understand, under this context of change and challenges and what are the biggest issues he's facing, what about railroads today and on into the future, Oscar?
Thanks, Sol. You are correct. One of the biggest misconceptions of our industry is that we are certainly obsolete, smelly, noisy, not environmentally friendly, and I could go on, but I won't because it's too difficult to say. You know, it is a 200-year-old industry that's populated by folks that are second and third, fourth generation individuals, and that's an impressive heritage that you bring. It is also a difficult place to bring about change. And change, as you said, Sol, is a constant concept that we face in our business and certainly in business as a whole. And our challenges are many across the legislative and regulatory front. Our labor unions are certainly concerned, and of course the economy always drives what we do to a degree. But the biggest probably issue that I think is probably germane to this room and to this audience and panel is really around the dynamics of a demographic shift that's happening not only in America, but certainly in our industry. We're losing all our long-tenured employees and replacing them with young, new, millennial, Gen X type of folks. And when you think of the new folks that are coming in, they are a little dubious about the industrial economy. Again, the perceptions of the industry are not such that that we can attract. Bob and I were talking about the fact that you know, companies like that you see here, and Jay and I were talking as well, are destination companies. I used to work at Coke. I used to work at AT&T. I could show up at a recruiting place and hire anyone and everyone I want. When you show up as a railroad out of Jacksonville, Florida, there may be some limitations. And so in order to excite folks, what we've engaged as a company, a couple-fold things. I'll just give a couple of sort of advertisements for our company. You may have seen our tagline, How Tomorrow Moves. It's accompanied by documents and facts that we can move a ton of freight 500 miles on 1 gallon of gas. So when we're accused of being environmentally not friendly, facts like that sort of kind of permeate and people begin to take notice. The other thing we try to do is to loosen and lessen the impact and perception of not being agile. And innovation is a critical new word and new concept that we're selling in our company. And my term for it is little I versus big I. Little I being improvement, which we're very good at and has generated quite a bit of results. Innovation is doing things completely differently. And for our industry to survive for the next decade, for the next 20 to 30 years, is we're going to have to evolve with these changing times. And we just posted, I just posted an article on LinkedIn, if you want to check it out, on Big I, and it's a way of creating a new environment and acceptance for an industry that's been around for 200 years, and we move literally anything you touch and feel and see today, somehow, somewhere, a railroad has moved a component of it. And I think that's an important part for young folks that are coming into the industry to be excited about. Because we're not a service orientation company like a lot of my panelists. We are just a very hardworking, honest, straightforward, environmentally friendly, and soon to be even sexier company.
Now, I was waiting for Oscar to show you his coveralls that he occasionally wears when he goes out in the field. Bob, now, clearly, when we see the old, I shouldn't say old, the PwC, we have old perceptions about, quote, accounting firms. And the Big Four, as we call it today, but it was a combination of lots of things. Clearly, you've been through a lot of transition as well, and transformation, not only in terms of what you do, but who you serve, and even the nature of the technology that you now are managing. So, Bob, would you talk about this same issue, this same question, as you think about your business specifically and your industry?
Yeah, thanks, Sol. And I'm not too worried at your opening comments around what these CEOs up here on the panel are going to say today. I'm going to find it more interesting to watch what about 10 candidates tonight say about a few different topics. So it'll be interesting to watch.
That'll be a real show.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about our world, PwC, some of you might know us as counting the Oscars, others may know us as an accounting firm, a tax firm, a consulting firm. So two facts that are maybe interesting you didn't know. First, the average age of our place is 27. Second, in the US alone, we probably recruit off campus 12,000 kids a year, and the number is probably closer to 25,000 on a worldwide basis. So while we do these things called accounting and tax and diligence and deal making and consulting and the like, we're a people machine. So as you think about the relevancy, and we're all talking about the relevancy of our business in terms of what it used to be and where is it going, we're all dealing with the same challenge. So 2 years ago, we asked ourselves a fundamental series of questions when we think about strategy. Over the next decade or two, how am I going to remain relevant? If I'm going to remain relevant, where should I invest and how should I grow? If I'm going to invest and grow, where will I get the talent and the intellectual property? And last but not least, how can I make sure we're disrupting but not disrupted? And in order to do that, think about the fundamental changes or megatrends that are happening in the marketplace. And we landed on 5 big trends. There was the issue of demographic shifts, shifting capital markets, concepts of urbanization, the issues of scarcity of resources, people included in that, and last but not least, and a couple of panelists have already talked about it, the concepts of technology. So talk about 2 of these in particular to Saul's question now. The challenges I would say we have is how do I remain relevant to a very demanding marketplace that doesn't need just audits, but needs a lot of other services. 87% of the CEOs on a worldwide CEO survey that we actually provide or do on an annual basis when we launch it in Davos would say 2 things. I struggle with strategy through execution, and man, I can't believe the pace of change that's happening. So how do we remain relevant to them? It requires us to then bring new and different services. Change the brand of the organization and get different capabilities and competencies. Point number 1. Point number 2, in order to do that, how do you bring a different set of skill sets in the organization? And that goes to diversity and inclusiveness. We were a fairly insular organization, but through acquisitions, direct hiring, diversification of our talent pool, much different than it is today. And the traditional workforce is much different. And you're going to hear from the panelists, we probably recruited 0 STEM skills X number of years ago. This past year alone, we've increased 7%, up to about 20% of STEM skill recruiting. So while we used to compete against those big 4, maybe sometimes Wall Street for finance people, we're competing against the likes of the Googles and the Facebooks and the Apples, candidly no different than the rest of the panelists up here. And last but not least is this concept of technology and disruption. It's historically a people business, but it's a people and technology-driven business. And that is for everybody in every organization we see. And we're not immune to that. And as a result, how do we get the right thinking, change agility, and passion to deal with the pace of change to actually continue to remain relevant while changing the business model all at the same time? Huge challenges that require us to think differently around how do we solve for this problem. Now come back to today. If we don't think differently around our demographics of our own people being more representative of those in the country, we're dead because no one will want to come work for us because we're a talent organization. It's the only asset we have. If I can't be a talent magnet, role model, environment, opportunity, etc., I am out of business. So to the CEO conversation we had earlier, it is all about a business imperative. And it's fundamental in both the change, it's fundamental in the brand, and it's fundamental in terms of what we do each and every day, and that's the only way we're going to actually deal with this issue going forward. Hope it helps all.
Great, thank you. So moving on to this whole thematic of change, but back into the financial services industry, but in a different context, I'd like you to hear from Jay. Now Jay, as I recall from some of the material that we have, in his firm, State Street, they have about $28 trillion of assets in what they call custody. And they have about $2.4 trillion of assets under management. Now again, as we think about markets, financial markets, and as we think about money movement, and we think about money requirements, and we think about global needs in addition to domestic needs, and as we think about how technology has, again, changed much of this, maybe Jay, you can talk and help us all understand the challenges that you have in your space, you know, even today and tomorrow versus what it used to be.
Sure, happy to do that, Saul. You know, for us, we have a business that pursues servicing and management of assets globally. And so our company in the last 30 years has gone from 0 to 40% of our revenues and our employees are outside the U.S. in about 100 different locations. So it's become a pretty global company in a relatively short period of time. So in addition to all of the issues that have been raised, you know, the advancement of technology, the digitization, we, like, for instance, Bob, as well as Gerald, we're in the people business. We're a service company. We don't make anything. We don't run railroads. So when we look at our core asset, it's talent. And we've got a very global organization. We're fortunate to be in the outsourcing business. So people outsource work to us, so whether it's regulation or other stresses and strains that a pension fund or a mutual fund might have, they'll turn and outsource the work to us. So we've got the good fortune that we've got a global business that has some growth, being disrupted and trying to disrupt ourselves from a technology standpoint. But the greatest challenge that we have is all around talent. How do you recruit the best talent? How do you bring it through your organization? How does your organization look from top to bottom, a reflection of the marketplace you're in, whether it's in the US, Asia-Pacific, or Europe? And you know, it's got also the nuance around the shift to technology. We have, of 30,000 employees, we have 7,000 technologists. Very few of them are skilled in today's technology. So there's people issues all over the place. And you know, for us, the challenge is not so much the recruitment of talent. I said in an earlier meeting that, and actually Oscar complimented us, that we can go to any college campus, certainly in the U.S. and around the globe, and recruit the best and the brightest. And we can bring them into our organization, and we've used that as a vehicle to specifically go after diverse top talent. And we get them into the organization, and we train them, and we motivate them. But our challenge is, as you move up through the organization, we don't look the same. And I'm sure in to different degrees, everybody shares a little bit of that challenge. So big issue for me is how to get talent through the organization, how to make sure that diversity exists not only on the entry level, but all the way through the organization.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to move over into the life insurance world. And Ted, you and I had a chance to chat a little bit earlier, but obviously, like with everybody else on the panel, there's been a lot of change. And can you share with us how you've experienced it and how you're managing to it and how you think about it going forward?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd start with an observation. If you look across this table, I was sitting here as the other gentleman here is speaking, the average longevity of the institutions is probably over 200 years. It's really amazing if you think about it. And one challenge, or one, I guess, point that I could add, I think, to some of the great comments that have been made would be one of the responsibilities of the senior management, in particular the CEO, is how do you navigate an institution that's had tremendous success? You can't be here for 200 years if you've not had that success. And bring forward all of the really significant attributes of the institution, which are just embodied in the people and the behaviors, the things that really make up the secret sauce of the institution. And at the same time, right, transition that to the changing face that we're talking about of America, all these trends that you're dealing with, the fact that everybody, it does feel like the pace of change, while there's always change, is heightening. And how do you do that in a way that both creates continuity and stability? Because we all, if you want to feel pride in the heritage that we have, and we all want to feel some degree of stability. You're part of a team. You're part of something that's bigger than yourself. But you have to create enough in the organization, a sense of urgency, and you have to create enough agility, and therefore you're actually disrupting your own organization to some degree to help people navigate, right? To have enough anticipation of what's going on outside and how that could impact your business model. Because what I've found in my experience is that what you might think of as the secret sauce of competitiveness of your organization, most people just think is essentially how we've always done business. And how we've always done business, there are elements of what made you successful, but frankly, they're just things that worked in the past, they're not working today, or maybe they worked in the past, but they actually weren't part of your competitive advantage. You actually were able to succeed despite those. So that issue of communicating with people in your organization and helping them transition and embrace the best of your heritage and your values, but at the same time transition that to be open to new ways of doing business and new ways of thinking. And again, I think it comes down to the only way you can do that is through people. You talk about culture. I don't think there's a single institution here that's not going to say about the strength of their culture. And culture ultimately is just the behavior of the individuals that are in the organization.
Great. So now I have a question for all of you, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes or less to answer this question, and I'd like you to just kind of role play with me that there's a reporter here where you're at an analyst meeting and somebody's asking you the simple question, given the fact that you're in life insurance, you're in banking services, financial services, accounting services, and railroad. What is it that is your point of differentiation that I would want to invest in your company more than your competitors? So let's start with you, Ted.
People need financial advice under any circumstance, and what they need as part of that financial advice is somebody they can work with, that they can trust, in an institution that's going to live up to the promises that they make. And at New York Life, we have a unique customer alignment. We are owned by our customers. We have no other constituency that we have to manage to, and that alignment allows us to place the customer first and foremost in all of our thinking, so that when we meet with people, we spend our time focused upon people, we help them with their priorities. Everybody that you meet with buys life insurance because they love somebody, and love is not going out of fashion.
Ka-ching! Okay, let's keep moving.
Ted, you're a tough act to follow.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So I would say there's 4 words that we talk about within our company about what differentiates us. One is our expertise. We have incredible expertise and talented people who know and understand the financial markets and how they work, how they operate, and we try to convey that expertise to our clients to help them be successful. Second is scale. We, like State Street and Jay's organization, have enormous scale capabilities to be able to operate and do things in a fashion on a global basis that's absolutely extraordinary, and our clients take advantage of that scale. They get some of the economics of our scale, and our shareholders get the benefits of our scale. Next is what Ted was talking about, client experience. You have to have an extraordinarily good client experience for people to want to do business with you. You can't just go out and sell your products and expect somebody to buy it. We're in the service business. If it's not a great experience, nobody's going to come back. And last but not least, it's trust. People trust us to do the right thing for them on their behalf and to take care of their assets, to watch after them, and to make sure that we take good care of them. And if we don't have trust at the foundation of everything we do, we're out of business.
All right. Another ka-ching here. All right, Jay.
So Gerald and I are kind of side-by-side competitors, so
Probably
hopefully,
us sitting together.
hopefully this sounds a little different.
We're listening.
So for me, it's the customer experience. You know, we're a business-to-business organization. We're defined by our customer experience. 80% of our revenue, new revenues every year, come from our existing customers. So what does that tell you as a CEO? It says you better get the customer experience right. Secondly, we're, I mentioned earlier, a global organization, and we have one of our values is global local. Global force, local citizen. So we're able to have a global company and leverage all the scale that Gerald referenced, but yet locally we're very local. You know, we do business locally with natives in that destination, but yet we can link it all together. So a lot of our customers are global and they can do business with us all around the world. If they walk into our office in Singapore, it's served by Singaporeans, but it has the same look and feel of State Street, same thing Luxembourg. So second would be global. And third, I would say, is we have a particular skill at seeing future trends. So one of our responsibilities to our customers is that given this reliance that they have on us and we have on them, is it's up to us to find the next new opportunity and make sure we build that next new capability or open the next market so that when they have the need that we're there for them.
All right, Jay. Ka-ching. So let's keep moving to Bob. Now, publicly traded company, not quite, right?
So I don't have any investors other than the partners that are in my organization because they fund all the capital needs. But let me give you the pitch if I had a series of investors. And let's have some fun with this. I have 4 fellow CEOs in the panel with me right now, and I know for a fact that they have particular business needs. Either they need help in actually addressing the various regulatory issues that are out there in terms of processes and procedures they've got to put in place to comply. I know for a fact they need help in terms of third-party assurance over information, either to their investors from a set of financial statements or otherwise. I know for a fact that they actually need help in system implementation. I know for a fact that when you look at society today, there's less trust than ever before. We're the organization to help them be better trusted and improve their performance overall. That market opportunity is huge based upon the CEO needs that are out there. Why do we have competitive advantage in that space? We've got the right people with the right skill sets across various companies to serve these 4 CEOs that are on this panel with me. And we've got enough breadth and scale around the global organization to help with complex problems that are getting far more complex, more global, and fast-paced than ever before. Switch gears. A future investor is probably one of my employees. The pitch to them is our job is to take you off of campus or from the job that you were previously at and enhance your resume. If you stay with us 2 years versus 6 years, and we've done the studies academically, you're going to have a 10 times multiple on your career path earnings if you stay with us for those incremental 4 years. You'll have an 8 times incremental promotional opportunity in terms of where you go. And last but not least, and we did this academic study as well, when I made a synopsis to a professor one day, that if you looked at traditional companies that have sourced other organizations, a lot of people look at McKinsey, Procter & Gamble, Goldman, the like. I bet you if you looked at their resumes of various CEOs around the world, I bet you PwC is actually in that resume. He went off, he actually did the study. He said, Bob, not only do you have as many as equal to any one of those 3, you actually have more than the combined of the 3. Huge possible opportunities in terms of serving the marketplace for revenue growth. That's my analyst pitch. And huge personal opportunities for every person that's going to have the opportunity of a lifetime to come work for us and do whatever they want in terms of their career paths, personally or professionally going forward.
Okay, a real and a virtual ka-ching.
I
Okay,
use that
Oscar.
pitch a lot on campus, so.
I didn't notice that it was practiced in.
Okay, Oscar.
So I'm going to need a choo-choo after mine, not a chainsaw. I think simply put in our industry is you got to stay relevant. You got to stay relevant through service excellence. And service excellence in our space is increasingly going to be, in a way, from an innovation perspective. I think I would slightly say it differently. You said be disrupting without being disruptive. I think I probably need to do both. Because that's the industry we're in. We're a relatively homogeneous group. We have the same physical assets, the same some physical infrastructure that we work through. And to be distinguishing and to have a comparative advantage, I think our service has to come through that innovation and technology. And of course, you never forget the fact that humans drive all of that. So the people side, I think we're all people businesses, and that's a clear and important mission. And I think one of the functions and why we attend things like this, because this is a great target-rich environment for people, and we're excited to see that. But thank you.
All right, chew. Let's go. Okay, we're going to move into the last question that I'd like to pose to each of you. And that is relative to your business, your marketplace, and how you view the opportunity associated with Latinos. And when I say Latinos, do you think about it as a niche? Do you think about it as kind of mainstream? How do you think about it in your business as you think about EPS, as you think about revenue growth, as you think about generating free cash, whatever your metrics are financially as you think about your business? So we'll start with you, Oscar, and work back this time.
It's a difficult question for us in our industry. We're not a retail organization. We're a business-to-business service provider, and as such, demographic trends, population increases and growth in certain demographics and all that don't entirely affect the work that we do. And so I probably would answer it, Sol, in a more personal way, in the fact that I have been of a heritage that supports diversity and is expected from me. I think as a leader of our organization, I'll use East LA street parlance. I think one of my huge duties is to represent our community and our heritage, and more importantly, do it through a way where performance and success and achievement are the drivers of an acceptance of someone of my color, and it begins to, across the world, drive a sort of a different perspective that, you know, here's a successful person that just happens to be of color. And by doing that, doing events like this, meeting folks like the people, the esteemed panel, I think we expand our horizons, we expand our viewpoints, and more importantly, I think you begin to show to people like me that achievement is entirely possible. And more importantly, from a success aspect for our company, is we begin to attract folks to come to our company and do the things that we need to do. So again, Sol, the demographics don't impact us as much from a business perspective, but it does from our people attraction aspect, and that's what I'm focused on.
Great. Thank you, Oscar.
Yes, Sol, so if I remember correctly, the last census that we did in the United States shows today that 17% of the population within the U.S. is of Latino origin in some way, shape, or form. So when you look at that very specific fact and then go to that mega trend I talked about, again, demographic shifts, that number is doing nothing but increasing. That means that the consumer base is significantly influenced by those individuals. So if we are not more attuned to the needs, the beliefs, the behaviors, the commonality of that workplace, of those consumers, whether they're an individual consumer or a business person that needs to consume our services, we will not be able to relate to them. Now go to the other side of the equation. If you look at the source of talent that I mentioned earlier, the 12 to 14,000 people that we recruit off a campus, across the campuses in the United States, in where we recruit, that number is about 3%. So there's a huge mismatch in terms of the opportunity now to have a diversified, really well-educated, well-intended, great behaviors, et cetera, huge opportunity for success group of people. And why would I ever not want to focus on the recruitment of them, the retention of them, and the deployment of them from a bottom line business perspective, and then going back to my sort of 2-minute speech for their own personal progress. So our challenge is, how do we do a few things? There is, in this case, a recruitment issue in terms of the supply of talent and make sure we're focused on it. Part of that is our job to actually make sure we're recruiting the right people with that right focus and setting some goals around it, which we're doing. Second is actually creating for the Latino community an understanding of what we do and the excitement around it that says they want to be interested in this profession broadly defined. So that's the opportunity. Make sure you're actually thinking about it and make sure you're doing something about it, ultimately to get better results. And last but not least, again, as you look at now diversification, and we've all said it in the previous session as well as this one, I need a different way of thinking for lots of different reasons. The United States in and of itself, if I stay just true to that, is no longer middle, west, white. The reality is it is much different. And if we're not reflective of that, like I said earlier, we are out of business because I won't be able to recruit. If I can't recruit, I don't have talent. If I don't have talent, I don't have the skill sets, the knowledge, and the like to serve the clients and the organizations that are relevant to my business, full stop.
Good, thank you. Let me before we move on with Jay and the rest of the panel, I need to interject just to help with the question a little bit. If you look at today, and if John Stump were sitting here at the table, he would talk about how 50% of all home mortgages, new home mortgages taken out today, are to Latino families. If the CMO of Toyota talked about domestic car sales in the United States of America, nearly 40% are sold to Latinos. If the CMO of Walmart, this little company called Walmart that has a little bit of sales, talked about the market opportunity, and he was just at another session, Stephen Quinn, where he talked about well over 90% of their growth today, not in 2020, not in 2050, today and on into the future is tied to the Latino market. So the dimensions are not only about ringing the cash register directly today and in the future, but also in terms of who your customers are, who your customers' customers are, understanding how people are using social media, how they're shopping today, how they're doing all these things in whatever form of business. And then as you think about entrepreneurship, obviously back to census data, Latinos in the last decade created 4 times the number of businesses of the rest of the population in the United States. So they're growing at 4x the rate, which means B2B, which means some are going to get bigger, some may stay small, but the point is that there is this, pardon the expression, tsunami that's occurring in the marketplace. So it is about people, it's about dollars, it's about suppliers, it's about a lot of things. So sorry that I wasn't as complete in asking the question to all of you. But maybe, Jay, you could pick up from that.
Yeah, let me pick up on that, Sol. As I mentioned earlier, we're more business to business, but we have customers, and those customers reflect all the trends that you've heard about today and that Sol did a nice job at accentuating. And so for us, it's about not only the recruitment, as Bob was mentioning, and I would say if you recruit a Latino population and they come into your firm and they have a nice job and they look upwards and they don't see that mobility because there's no Latinos sitting around my table, then shortly they're going to find some other place to work because they're in demand as a group of individuals. But we do business with a lot of government agencies, and as a result of that, procurement rules dictate that you have a certain demographic within your company. And so our customers, not only from a contractual standpoint, but when we're doing business with firms, if we're sitting on the other side of the table with a woman, a Latino, another person of color, if we look dramatically different, it's going to affect us in time. So regardless of not being in the consumer marketplace, where I think it's front and center and much more obvious, in the business-to-business community, it's the same thing. you're going to see an outgrowth, you're going to see a development of people of differences, and if you look different, it's going to affect you going forward. Last point I would make is, back to my global theme, is Latin America is a critical prospective business market for us. So again, if we're not successful in that market looking local in a local community, we're also going to fall short. Gerald?
Well, thank you, Saul. I think your points are extraordinarily well taken. The buying power and the demographics of the Latino community are extraordinary. If we don't think about the business opportunities in terms of capturing that marketplace and marketing to those segments, then we're kidding ourselves. We're going to lose out on growth. We're going to lose out on opportunities. We won't be able to grow, hire people, do the things that generate economic growth for this country. We, like many global organizations, have operated in Latin America, in our case, for 120 years. So we've operated all throughout Latin America for an extended period of time and have gotten to know something about the culture, the buying habits, just by operating on an institutional level within the Latin American community. No one Latin person is the same as another person. They come from different countries, different cultures, different buying powers, different habits. We talk about Latinos as being almost a homogeneous set of individuals. It's not. It's clearly not. So how you segment, how you market to, how you think about those demographics and the enormous buying power is something that we talk about and think about quite a bit. In our case, an obvious place other than serving the Latin American marketplace and the countries and institutions there, we have a very large wealth management business. So segmenting how we go to the Latin American community, the Latinos in this country, is very different than we would go after a different client segment. And so it's also attracting and developing individuals who can relate to that community, can advise that community in a very different way than we would do a different type of client segment. Statistics that I saw that was very, very interesting, within the Latinos across the country, something like 86% of the purchase decisions are made by the woman in the household. Extraordinary. So if we think we're going to go sell to the man of the household, we're going to the wrong place. So you've got to think about, how do you advise the woman in the household, the whole family, about wealth, preservation of wealth, advising in terms of where to place their investments, how they think about investments, wealth transfer, generational transfer of wealth. Those are all extraordinary complex issues that we have to think about very differently from a client segment point of view, which we do. Last but not least, we actually have a very large institutional platform within our company that provides services to advisors who serve end clients. So the capabilities and applications we put on those platforms to sell to the end investor and working with the advisors who would approach the end investor is something else that we think about that it's got to be different. The look and the feel and the touch and the way people get information is very, very different from a client segment to client segment approach. So we do think about it as both a business, a territory, and a client segment. And it's very complex, and we need everybody in this room's help to make us successful for our clients.
Thank you, Gerald. Just a quick factoid for everybody again. There are more Latinos becoming millionaires in an absolute sense than any other group in the United States of America. And some may say, well, gee, how could that be when they're only 17% of the population, da-da-da-da-da-da. And again, it's math. Because if you look at the traditional white male, white female group, obviously there's a higher death rate in absolute terms of that category. But the punchline is when you think about growth and wealth management, I don't know, I went to school in Wyoming and I learned basic math, but it sure seems to me that this would be a group of people that I'd be focusing on and targeting, just as was discussed. So what about you, Ted, and your business and how you thought about it?
Well, I pick up on the comment you just made. I mean, I think that you take New York Life. New York Life is a company that's primarily focused on the U.S. market. In fact, the only operation we have outside the United States is in Mexico, a very large life insurance business there. And if you're focused on America, and you're focused with your core product being life insurance on families, and in particular young families, you can do the math. You know, there are a lot of things that are hard to predict and figure out in life, but demographics are destiny, right? We know where the American market's going. So this isn't a particular strategy or a niche or something that we're pursuing. This is our strategy. Our strategy fundamentally is to change with the face of America to help young families. And this issue about growth, it's a great growth opportunity for us because how we go about doing it is actually growing the market. Because despite all the wealth and despite this increase in population, the fact of the matter is this is still a market that is largely underserved in terms of their help with financial advice and financial products and services. So what we have as an opportunity is to essentially then dictate how we do that. And the way we do that is being very, very local. In other words, what we do is we put ourselves into the communities that we serve. That means that we hire people within the communities, that means we adopt the community values, and that means that ultimately then we have the ability for this growth story to be a growth story not just about New York life, seeing a market opportunity and actually growing and helping the size of that market grow, but the growth story as Latino consumers themselves become more affluent, we then grow with them and help them meet their needs. So I see this as the single most important strategy that we have as a company.
Great, great. Well, I think you've seen an example here of very thoughtful leaders that are thinking hard, not only about, let's call it the macro issues in their business, but this notion of growth, when you think about customer experience, when you think about employees and attracting the talent that you want, and correlating growth with talent that can help you get that growth maybe more effectively than others. All of these themes have come out here from this panel, and I really think it's impressive. I really think it's great that all of you agreed to be here today, because again, a sign of commitment is when you allocate time. A sign of And a sign of commitment is when you're willing to share your thoughts. And sometimes people may not fully understand them. Sometimes they may not agree with them. Sometimes you may be thinking, geez, is this the place where I want to say some of the things that, I've been thinking about? And I think that's a sign of leadership and commitment when you come and do what you've done today. So let's give this panel one more big Alpha round of applause.
And now, to close out our program, here is Yvonne Garcia, National Chairwoman, ALPFA.
Well, thank you all, but I have one more duty up here this afternoon, and that is to introduce your chair, and that's Yvonne Garcia. Now, from what I've seen of the conference already this afternoon, and I have to admit I've only been here this afternoon, it's a very dynamic conference. Obviously, credit to Charlie and Yvonne, but I want to ask her to come up here, and she's going to wrap up the afternoon, the day. Please help me welcome Yvonne.
Thank you, Sol. The number one question I've gotten in the last 1 hour is, did you notice there are no women up here? Well, here you go. I may not be a CEO, but stay tuned. We did invite several women CEOs, but perhaps they were out shopping. Yeah. Right? Gerald said we are in charge of the household. And the men in the room will certainly attest to that. First of all, thank you so much. I had the benefit of being part of a closed session a little earlier with these 5 CEOs, and it was extremely refreshing right? Their thoughts, a lot of commonalities in terms of how they envision diversity and all of the great initiatives that they have within their own firm and how they want to progress and continue the conversation and, more important, deliver results. So thank you, Sol, for moderating this panel, Gerald, Jay, Ted, Oscar, and Bob. And thank you to your commitment for ALPFA. I know that it's a great investment being here with us this evening, and I really appreciate it. Your corporations are true examples of what corporate America needs more of. You know, after hearing your remarks today, both here and in the closed session, it's no secret that since before the discovery of the New World and before the global impact of the Americas was felt, global businesses and the talent to drive it have become critically important to the development and growth of corporations and society. You know, as Sol mentioned in his opening remarks, changes in technology and, even more important, the way we use technology have accelerated the pace of globalization. The creation of global infrastructures makes it possible to connect in seconds what may have taken days or at one point months. In the click or flick of a phone screen, we can have shared experiences with the world on everything from Korea's 2 billion views of the music Gangnam Style video to the tweets that remove chokehold of dictators, all at 120 characters at a time. You know, when Edward Bulwer Lytton wrote, "The pen is mightier than the sword," he never imagined the power of a blog, a text, or for that matter, Facebook. Digital communication has transformed the globe and has the connection and experience we have with one another. This virtual collective consciousness that has been created impacts everything we do and how we do it. For corporations, globalization means new business opportunities, new customers, markets, capital, suppliers. You heard a lot of our CEOs this evening talk about the business imperative of embracing diversity. And more importantly, a new talent perspective that comes from being able to conduct business with anyone in any part of the world. You know, and this has led to multi-country supply chains, making the production of products as diverse as the people that make them. But who will lead these individuals? The thing that makes diversity so hard in corporations is that in spite of a genuine desire to diversify the workforce, the actual operationalizing of the strategy throughout the enterprise often is overlooked. Basically, people still tend to hire, promote, and perceive as valuable the talent that resembles them most. And this is not just about culture or skin color. It's any bias against any characteristic that the dominant group in a particular context might consider other. Basically, anyone that doesn't resemble the dominant group or the key decision makers. And to mitigate this, corporations should assess their cognitive biases that prevent them from accurately interpreting the behavior, character, motives, and worth of people who differ from who has traditionally been considered their top talent. You know, this is something that both Jay and Bob spoke about in our closed session. However, this is seen, you know, as a risk by some. You know, a few will say, why fix what isn't broken? But it's clear that companies that treat diversity as they would any other business imperative and invest and clear the barriers to entrance, systematically make gatekeepers, sticky floors, glass ceilings a thing of the past. You know, because by purposely developing global leadership talent throughout your companies, you will find new opportunities and better execution versus potential failure of multinational strategy or even worse, loss of market share. And similarly, focusing on development and modification of products and services to resonate with the new market segments and buying power that we just spoke about earlier can be achieved by tapping into the transformative power of ERGs. Many companies that are sitting represented here today have tremendous power in their ERGs and are using it to benefit from it from a return on investment, in, whether it be through their products, services, or talents. You know, in the global world we live in, I would say there are three main things that are strongly correlated, and that's diversity, innovation, and competitive advantage. Deliberately creating the system where each of these is maximized and developed will produce dividends for the corporations and, more importantly, the customers that we serve. Positioning your corporation, given the demographic shift that we've spoken about so much today, is going to require a deep understanding of the data, and Ted, you mentioned this earlier, and a skill at converting it to information that informs a successful strategy. For example, we can clearly see corporations that invest significant resources into developing strong global brands and have enjoyed access to the greatest leadership talent that exists around the globe, helping recruitment of superior talent. But there's a significant movement by millennials, which we also addressed earlier today. And that's sometimes to move away from these companies with large brands that they perceive won't take into account work-life balance. Sometimes they shy away from certain brands, even at the risk of taking a lower salary. Forward-looking corporations are also planning for greater investment in areas that they traditionally perhaps relied on the government at times to provide, one of them being education. Recently, Facebook announced a partnership with Haku, why not Alpha, right? And that was to attack and develop talent. And Starbucks launched a new education policy to encourage each of their associates to acquire a degree, and therefore making them more valued employees. And many more examples will follow. These nimble corporations realize the shift in an operating environment and are redefining them and leading the way with the diverse talent, and that is their forefront and what they have on the top of their agenda. You know, as Latinos become a much more significant part of the workforce, we must ensure that we position as strong contributors who embody America's values of determination, optimism, and patriotism. The reality is, corporations will not meet their goals without us. And that's where Alpha comes in, serving as a bridge between Latinos and the business community. We open doorways for Latinos to gain access to guidance, network, careers, capital, while simultaneously creating the pipeline of leaders that this economy demands. The leaders represented on the stage today showcase a commitment to a brighter future of Latinos and a more prosperous future for America. And for that, I am extremely grateful to have you here, and I thank you for the wonderful wisdom that you shared with us this evening, both in this room and in our closed session. So thank you for your leadership and for paving the way for others, so that one day perhaps myself and the rest of my board of directors and even student members could one day be in your seat. So thank you. Thank you. We will have a reception following, and you will be escorted through those doors into the reception room. Hopefully everyone will be able to join us. Thank you. Oh, whoops. And if you received an invitation to the reception, it is through those doors.